Previously on the Game On podcast.
And obviously with pre-season recommencing for the new year, there's obviously a few things that are going on at the moment, but the biggest one for me, and that came across my desk today, is Carlton's Jacob Wiedering facing an extended period on the sideline after a calf injury. Not what you want in the pre-season.
Yeah, not a great injury, and also he's actually a little bit young for doing. I know he's been around, but the calf injury and all that is more your late 30s.
Yes.
Myself doing one umpiring an under-11s footy game on a Saturday morning. It was pretty embarrassing.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Sportscast SA presents Game On. Game On. South Australians' destination for everything sports. Local, national, and international sports. AFL football, soccer, basketball, golf, baseball, tennis, cricket, and any other sports played in this wide world. And we're going to have a blast doing it. So sit back, relax, and let's do this thing. Welcome to Game On.
Welcome to Game On. My name's Pete, once again joined with Malcolm, and a little bit of fun there. Injuries are never fun at any time, but I thought we'd just chuck that one in there as a little bit of fun that doing it at an under-11s game was...
Yeah, no problem with getting sledged over that, mate. It was, as I said, it was embarrassing at the time. I did manage to limp around and get through it, though. So,
fair enough. And as I said, injuries are no fun for anybody, and... we were going to add a little bit of the previously on a previous guest about Tim May, and we might talk about that briefly in a second once we get through our introduction with Around the Grounds.
Yep.
Around the Grounds.
On Around the Grounds today, we're going to talk the baseball, the SANFL. A couple of trial games have been announced, the soccer. And Mark Harrity is our special guest today in our Past Players and Past Legends. But we're going to kick off with cricket. We had Maisie on late last week, obviously with the test finishing a little bit earlier. Very privileged to have Tim May on the show, and obviously we left that interview completely unedited, just to sort of give a little bit of background and some substance to what he is going through at the moment.
Yeah, education is not the right word, but it was just giving... Yeah, an indication on the medication. And look, it was a hard interview to do in terms of, yes, it was emotional. I was thinking of Tim and trying to also help Tim out with the answers. And obviously Tim's hanging home. And Tim said it before we started interviewing, Malcolm, you're going to have to jump in and help here and that. So look, but let's get to
and also, we did give him the option of, hey, look, if you're not feeling quite right and you want to stop, we're quite happy to do that. But he soldiered on beautifully, and like you said, you're able to help him.
As Tim, and he's doing quite a few interviews at the moment, he's very keen to, let's get the most important thing out there. Guys, don't be piss weak. Go and get tested.
Yep.
And that's Maisie. I think it's part of Tim's journey at the moment, and almost therapy, that if he can go and get some guys to pull their heads in and go to the doctors. And look, I was openly talking to Andrew Rumble about that on Sunday, and Rumble said, yeah, I'm guilty of it. And I said, hey, most blokes are.
Exactly right.
I've been through a bit lately and got told, I had to go and get tested for a few things, and that wasn't much fun, but it's life, and get on with it and get things done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, once again, we thank Tim May for his time. That interview is obviously on Facebook and via the socials and whatever podcast provider that you might be with. So do have a listen to it. Very, very important message. Yes, fantastic playing career, and we obviously covered that, but the most important thing, as you said, was just about the testing, and he missed one, and that was probably the one that got him. So some lessons learned there. But mate, we're going to stick with the cricket.
And look, but that he's fighting hard.
Yes,
it's in a good spot emotionally with his life and his relationship with Katie and his kids and all that. And he really made the point that, hey, let's get on with it. Let's fight.
Absolutely.
And he is.
All right, let's stick with the cricket. Obviously, Tim was over for the Adelaide Test. Obviously, we were able to catch him at just the right time to have a little bit of a chat. But the Test match in Adelaide, wow, it ended in basically 2.5 days. What went so wrong? And
I do have to say one thing, very unusual. I don't think it was a great pitch. Unusual for Adelaide Oval. There's some wording that they tried different grass and it hasn't worked. I admit I couldn't work out that, hang on, we're playing the West Indies. We know the West Indies aren't a great side at the moment. I would have thought that would have been the old-fashioned Adelaide Oval road. Rolled, and that you would have been batting on King William Street Highway.
Yep.
And it wasn't. You saw in the first couple of overs how much the ball did and went, uh-oh. And, yeah, Travis was the only batsman of the game. Mackenzie showed a little bit for the West Indies, but Travis was really the only batsman out of either side who got on top.
Well, it's interesting.
I think the ball just kept doing so much. Yeah. And, look, there were some encouraging signs for the West Indies, but just overall, I don't think it was a great pitch. And I actually said I was with Harmsy and that we were watching at the Queen's Head at that stage when Alex Carey got out, when Kez got out, I said, I reckon West Indies will be 5 for at stumps.
Yes.
And they were,
pretty close.
They were 6 for, so yeah.
Obviously, like you mentioned there, Travis Head doing amazingly in his home test, but I was quite impressed with Hazelwood. Is he Glenn McGrath 2.0? Because he
always has been
putting the ball right on the spot most times. He's
always been pretty similar in that regard, and I think actually he's bowled pretty well all summer and he beat the bat. Now he's finally got the nicks and the rewards have come, and it's been pretty incredible over the last, his figures over the last 3 tests are quite ridiculous. I think he's averaging 9 runs a wicket. Quite crazy.
Where does this leave, obviously, the West Indies? Obviously it looked like they were in the game there for a little bit with the Australian batsmen not really going on with it except for Travis. Obviously, fantastic bowling by a debutant.
Yeah.
Where does that what does that sort of say to you about West Indian cricket? Are they on the complete rebuild, or have they taken that next step and been able to produce a couple of really, really good players?
The real worry is now will they stay with Test cricket? As soon as someone's tended to do well from the West Indies over the last few years, they're then offered 2020 contracts. So it's very hard to keep people. So it's a world cricket problem where the top 3 nations have got to look after the rest and actually think of the rest, whether that happens, whether there's enough thought process and not selfishness. We're just going to have to wait and see. Trying to get India to do the right thing, considering 78 cents from every dollar in world cricket comes from India, which is probably an incredible stat. I don't think people are aware of, to some extent, of how much control India has over world cricket. And we've now got these 2020, it's almost like a window. And, cricket at the moment here, and also here, it's the Sheffield Shield is almost a tacked on afterthought.
Yeah.
Play a little bit at the start, get that over. Then we've got the real thing, the Big Bash thing.
Yep.
And then the Shield season's tacked on again at the end. And, for me, I think we've got it the wrong way around, but I understand why, because that's economically.
It's going to be a hard one to change, and obviously some of our guests recently have obviously flagged that as well, in that it is going to be it's a hard bus to stop at the moment. Shamar Joseph, as I was mentioning there, debutant, 5 for 94 off of 20 overs, really looked lively at times, and then went on with it with the bat a little bit too, which was really impressive.
I think it was his attitude, which everyone loved, and everyone fell in love with in terms of
the Australian crowds
that.
were clapping him.
Oh, look, I think we just loved a guy who was just so combative and enjoying it and having a real crack. He gets Steve Smith out in his first ball of Test cricket, and you have the photo of Nathan Lyon welcoming into the club of people who've taken a wicket with their first ball in Test cricket. Just that bit of, and look, it was quite on Friday when they made us bat again. There's roar around the crowd, but we said in the I may have yelled out in the bodyline bar, yay, 15 minutes more drinking time was what seemed to be the thought process of a fair few in there. Not me.
Yes.
So.
All right, a couple of last things on the Test cricket. Steve Smith, you did mention just then, so you sort of led me into it very nicely. Wasn't really a success, him opening. Is it a case of we put a little bit too much emphasis on him being successful straight away in that role?
It's one innings. Let's remember that. It's one innings. Look, I think the worry was he didn't seem to know where his stumps were. Now, Steve Smith used to know exactly and never played miss. Like, people keep thinking Steve Smith is so unorthodox technique. Mm-hmm. No, Steve Smith makes unusual ball movement before the bowler lets go of the ball.
Shuffles around the crease like nobody I've ever seen.
He's then generally in perfect position when the guy lets go of the ball, and the ball generally gets hit where it should go. So, Greg Chappell's the most anal person I've known about technique, and he lauds Steve Smith's technique. That's good enough for me.
Absolutely.
So I think but he does. I just don't think. I think he's out of form.
Yep.
And he just. Like, that should have been let go through to the keeper. He's played at the ball on the 4th, 5th stump line. So we just got to wait and see.
Absolutely. And my last one for the Test match, obviously, here in Adelaide, was that knowing that Australia potentially could have bowled out the West Indies quite early or quite early in the third day, and then obviously having to chase a very, very small total. I did hear Peter Malcom on ABC Radio talking about, it was frustrating that we've got the West Indies again, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to back over that subject. Is it a case of that Cricket Australia or the SACA or someone could have arranged like a T20 style game just to get a little bit more value out of? I know it was last minute, but could they have done something to just get a little bit more value? Because, again, the crowd turned up on day 3.
I think the crowd
knowing that it was probably going to be all over pretty quickly.
We've got 17,000 there on the Friday. It was an incredible crowd. Look, do I think that should happen? I think it should be written in to the agreements, but good luck getting the players and whatever to sign it. Now,
not necessarily the Australian players, but maybe a local team or some local, under-19s or just something that shows you the next generation. I know it's hard to organise last minute, but it would have been nice that the crowd got to hang around for another.
I think it should be
hours.
I think it should be the test sites. Yep. They're there. They've committed to playing. They've played 2 days and 1 session. Why not have a 2020 game? Whatever. I don't think that's too much to ask.
100 balls each.
Yeah, I don't think that's too much to ask from the sides there.
Yep.
I will say, and exclusive here on Sportscast Media, I'll be very careful, and Pete, you may have to check this later on that side of it.
No, we can edit if we have to.
Yeah, I do wonder, allegedly, that Cricket Australia compensated the SACA for having West Indies 2 days in a row, 2 series in a row, and the Test match beginning on Wednesday. Oh. And I think, probably allegedly, I think we've left it enough there.
Yep, we'll leave that one as it is. But, obviously, like I said, whether something could have been arranged just to give a bit more value to the crowd, considering, once again, South Australian crowds have turned up to a game that was essentially over the night before.
Well, the Test match starts on the Wednesday, so there's at least the obligatory 3-day break before the next Test commences. So, therefore, Saturday and Sunday were still accommodated there. There was no reason why something can't happen on Saturday or Sunday.
Very cool. All right, let's leave the Test match there. We'll obviously talk about the Brisbane Test, day-night Test coming up next week.
The weather forecast in Brisbane is not great, so it's a bit interesting there.
It will be to see whether they get on the ground. But we're going to move on to the Strikers. The Strikers finished out the regular season on a bit of a high and obviously making the finals. Really started to show just how cobbled together the side's been with a couple of players coming in at the last minute and doing their role really, really well. Jason Gillespie must be very, very happy with that result.
Look, we knocked Perth out, which is a significant achievement. Their arrogance in terms of it is a different country over in WA. The bizarre headline in the paper there, they've only got 1 player get short out, and that's it.
And I think there was something on the scoreboard.
Congratulating them getting through. So it was quite crazy. And, look, last night, Brisbane just too good. Well, 1 player too good last night. Mm-hmm. Brown smashed us. It was quite ridiculous. 140 off 57. That's
Well, it was 100 off of, 41, which was like the second fastest one day, I think. T20
It was quite crazy. And, look, it was one man was just too good last night. And, so the season there over. A disappointing way to go out, really, that we weren't even competitive after. The game was probably over after that 6-7 overs last night, realistically.
Yep.
That was disappointing. But
on a positive note,
Lloyd Pope coming into the side helped.
Yep.
That seemed to get the balance. We're going with the two leggies who are different. Popey's a bit quicker, bowls more wrong-uns than Boyce, who's more your traditional slower leggy. So that worked. And it certainly worked in WA, where last night they probably didn't bowl as well, the one short side. So, look, I think the bowling there is still a big question. Darcy Short didn't really come off. Obviously, Matt Short did overall.
Yep.
Darcy Short, and then Weathers was good from when he came back into the side after, where Lynn had been very good. So, probably...
Sort of going to mention that Jake, previous guest of ours, as we've already said, had a little bit of an indifferent start, but once he got back in, it was hard to get him out, so to speak. And I thought he contributed, especially to the Perth game, that kept the strikers in it. Unfortunately, didn't go on with it in Brisbane or up at the Gold Coast there.
Probably just not enough overall contributors. Probably wasn't enough. And look, it happens to all sides. I think it's a bit farcical. It's almost tricking the public, right? We've hooked you in, so you're on now. Now, it doesn't matter if we've lost all the overseas players, and so guys come in who haven't played. And, so I still don't think the season's right. It should be finished while they're still here, but, that's another topic.
For you, mate, last one on the cricket, big tick for the strikers this year, do you think? Or are we still sort of on the fence a little bit?
I think a tick, but not a big tick.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll probably more say the 6 out of 10, not the 7 out of 10.
Fair call. Probably about 6.5. So there you go.
Yep.
Totally agree. All right, mate, let's move on to the AFL. Adelaide Crows head to Robe for a bit of a pre-season camp. I know that's not a good word to sort of associate with the Crows, but I think they've got their house in order now and obviously heading out somewhere local. I believe it's Jordan Dawson's hometown. So
and I think they tend
bit of synergy there.
Try and share that around a bit with all that. And look, Robe's as good a spot as any. Fantastic facilities down there. It's I'm sure the road people will jump aboard the bus, and it'll be good.
As we mentioned, quite a bit of heat around in Adelaide today. I'm sure the beach sessions will probably be plenty, and players are going to come back with a pretty good tan. All right, we move on to Port Adelaide. Is Port Adelaide's Todd Marshall the most important player or important forward? For 2024.
Yes.
Sure.
Overwhelming,
sweet.
yes.
Yeah, I agree too.
Look, I love in terms of his little smart knock-ons. I love his footy smarts. Look, he probably hasn't kicked on enough. He's got to go for Port to go all the way, which, I think they're a chance. Mm-hmm. They need him to go from the good player to the very good player.
Is it a case of him just being in the shadow of Charlie Dixon a little bit? Potentially?
I think there's times Port are too Dixon conscious.
Yep.
And I actually think that plays into the hands of the opposition.
Mm-hmm.
But now Marshall, Lord showed a fair bit in the finals last year.
Yep.
Finlayson, obviously, huge, massive off-field things there with him. So he started the year really well and fell away. You can't blame him for that. Yep. So I think there's some others there, and I think Port have got to concentrate on Marshall, make him.
Yep.
He's got to be the number one.
I'm glad I put that one on the sheet, mate.
Yep.
Around the AFL, Brad Johnson back to the Whitten Oval to help the forwards in a bit of a consulting role, not necessarily a coach as such. I think that's good.
Yeah, I think he's a good person to have around, though. He's one of those bubbly personalities, full of beans. Probably that, I think, Whitten Oval and Western Bulldogs with, Beveridge as coach probably needs that sort of person.
Yep.
As much as anything, because he's so intense. So
obviously his role on Fox Footy seems reasonably analytical with what he's talking about. If he can help those forwards, finish obviously the hard work done by the midfielder, I think it's only a positive. And like you said, there's other reasons there, and I think the bubbly personality is exactly what they need.
Just try and teach them leading patterns a bit more. And they've got Ugle Hagan. Norton, who's probably not a supernatural forward. Let's remember he started off at centre half back. I think he's still more suited to the other end.
Yes.
Darcy, who still hasn't kicked on yet. So there's still plenty of youth there. So probably teaching leading patterns is, I would fancy, is that, and then kicking for goal, but just where to lead to is probably the thing they'll concentrate on.
Obviously. And to finish us off, just something that came across the screen this week was the number of top 10 draft picks that will potentially be playing in 2024. And there was a team that sort of surprised even me that was sitting at number one, considering there's been some clubs that have been down the ladder quite a bit. There's been some clubs that have had some concessions along the way that, potentially could have been top of the list. But Essendon sitting top of the list with potentially 12 players, top 10 draft picks playing. Unbelievable stat, really.
It is a surprise. They've also had some top 10 draft choices in the last couple of years where they had 2 in a row and all that who haven't kicked on yet, had fair few injury problems. So, it is one which has snuck aboard because you sort of tend to forget those guys who've been injured so much. So, it is one. Okay, you can argue, well, hang on, Gold Coast with the academy, those guys would have been top 10. So, I get that. But I think it's a good one to uncover. And, it's an interesting one reminding that there's probably a fair bit of ability on that list at Essendon, and how much will it kick on or not?
Well, that's something that we're going to obviously be talking about as the AFL season comes up, that Essendon might be a little bit of a dark horse because these players are getting on the park. You did mention Gold Coast and North Melbourne, obviously sitting at 2 and 3, but the Adelaide Crows with 5 and Port Adelaide with 4, that was an interesting little stat for me that, that both those clubs have not really bottomed out, so to speak. I know the Crows did a couple of years ago, but, not bringing in massive amounts. And
it's interesting with Port, remembering one of them's actually a recruit in Jason Horne-Francis. So, yeah.
Crazy. All right, mate, we'll continue on with the tennis. Alex de Minaur crashes out in the 4th round with a bit of an epic match against Andrei Rublev. Yeah,
disappointing in terms of 3-2 in the 4th set. Was this is going to go down to the wire. Come on, Alex, and just fell away. 6-3 and then 6-love in the last. It was really, really disappointing, and brings back the questions which we all thought we were starting to go away about Alex, about mental toughness and questions about him. All of a sudden, the monkey's back on the back again. So
because his lead up to the Australian Open was very, very impressive with beating a lot of these players, but he just seemed to fall in a hole there in the 5th set. And
I think if he'd gone down, say 6-4 in the last set, but 6-love,
hard to console. His partner was consoling him obviously while he was doing his warm down there, and I think that probably gives you a good indication as to how much that meant. And then obviously his interview afterwards sort of saying, look, I don't want to be sitting here, talking about, a loss that potentially I could have won. So, very, very hard. Storm Hunter had her best Australian Open, coming through a couple of rounds of qualification and then making the 3rd round.
Yeah, encouraging. Again.
Not her specialty singles either.
Yeah, but it needs to be believe in yourself. I think that's probably a few people are trying to say, Storm, you've actually got the ability. Believe in yourself.
Yes.
Don't just think I'm doubles and that's it. Yeah, so as we know, how much of sport's played above the head, and I think there's a couple of classic examples.
Absolutely, and obviously we congratulate her. I did read a little bit of a background story. Parents basically, have thrown everything at her for a tennis career, and she's basically earned more by making the 3rd round and being able to pay that back. So it's just that Australian way, isn't it? So we congratulate her on success, and hopefully this is a stepping stone. Debate still raging about matches starting and finishing too late at the Australian Open. Do you see this as being a little bit of smoke where there's fire, or are we sort of making a bit of a mountain out of a molehill?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think so. We go the extra day. I don't understand why then Sunday is a rest day in it. Why not use that day as well? Mm-hmm. So let's get these games bang. Yeah, because it is ridiculous playing 2 o'clock in the morning and stuff like that. So I think they've gone the 1 day longer. Let's refine it and get it better. That's hopefully still the next solution.
Obviously, like everything, TV plays a huge part in this.
Massive part.
Obviously, starting matches at 7 p.m, 8 p.m, Australian time does flow into early morning US and Europe and et cetera, et cetera. But that probably leads me to my next point in that it seems like the crowds at the Australian Open are well and truly up there as per normal, but obviously with those late nights and obviously the players obviously provoking a little bit of reaction to it, is the Australian Open at risk of being lost?
Oh, I wouldn't have thought so. I think that's pretty. I think the US Open is similar in that way and all that. So I don't think there, but there's a few people there. I think they've got to jump on security and throw a few people out a bit earlier while the Terps takes effect.
Yes, well, that was what I was going to say. So, all right, mate, we'll leave the tennis there. Obviously, by the time we talk this time next week, we will be crowning champions, but certainly looks like at this stage, Djokovic and Alcaraz are around about the mark, but certainly the quarterfinals that are going to be played over the next few days are going to sort that out, and it's usual suspects at the moment. So, and the women's game, well, that's anybody's guess at the moment. There's players getting beaten left, right, and centre, and I know we're recording a touch earlier and watching the Coco Gauff match against, I think, the qualifier from, believe it or not, Ukraine. So interesting there as well. So
Coco's pulling clear in the third set.
Yeah. All right, mate, let's take a very, very quick break and we'll come back and we'll whiz through the baseball, the SANFL, the soccer, and we won't whiz through Mark Harrity.
No.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
All right, we kick off with the Giants, the baseball, as we sort of thought they would, we sort of debated whether they'd take the foot off the pedal and try a few things or keep the foot on the pedal. They sure as hell kept it on the pedal, finishing the minor round season with a 29-game win and 11-game loss season. So I think statistically one of the best for the Giants ever.
And how the batting, a couple of the games were close, and I checked one game and it was 3-2, and it was close. Checked again, half an hour later, whatever, and we were still batting in that innings and ended up getting 12 runs in an innings.
I think that was the fifth or sixth inning where they piled on 12 runs.
Incredible. So that's encouraging, where there's obviously a fair bit of batting power that can hopefully come back in a series and then blow the opposition away.
Absolutely.
So, look, to win 4 away, and so they tied up the minor premiership before the last 2, but still encouraging, I reckon, to win the last 2 as well.
Agreed, and we did talk about that in previous episodes where, they win 3 and then let the last one go, or win 2 and then let the last 2 go. So what's been impressive is their batting and their ability to be able to score runs and big runs. 16-7 in the first game against Brisbane, 17-2 in the second, 6-3 in the third, and 11-5. Yeah. Now, I do have the standings up here on my screen.
Yep.
Their batting difference is at plus 120.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's ridiculous.
Their nearest opponent has a plus 29.
That's huge.
That is huge in the scheme of things. Yeah. So they're not giving up a lot of runs. They are scoring a lot of runs. From a cricketing point of view, it's absolutely perfect bowling, perfect batting.
We look forward to the home series against the Melbourne Aces.
Absolutely, starting on the 26th of January. So looking forward to watching that one with interest. All right, mate, we move on to the SANFL. We like, as we've done previously, we like to keep them in the news. They don't have the budget, obviously, of what the AFL do to have it 365 a year, so we'll do our best to keep it there. But West Adelaide playing Adelaide at Football Park there, and South Adelaide playing Woodville West Torrens at Flinders University over in week number 1 of the trial games. Yeah,
look, Footy Park,
it's a shadow of its former self at the moment.
Yeah, but at least it's still being used, and so they're might go and have a look if I haven't got anything else on at that time.
That is March 2nd. Obviously, very important for some of those clubs, especially someone like a West Adelaide, Woodville West Torrens under a new coach, to just see how things pan out and go from there. And then week number 2, we've got Glenelg and Sturt at Thebarton Oval, West Adelaide v Centrals at Hisense there, and North v Nord. I think the first two games. at the parade. I think the first two games, Glenelg and Sturt and Western Centrals, are being played on the Friday night, and the Nord North game being played at Nord Oval there at 2:10 on the Saturday. So
correct.
Really looking forward to sort of getting out to a few of those trial games, and let's get some footy back on the agenda. And obviously Glenelg, ex-captains coming back into the fray. Are they the team to beat at this stage? I know it's early.
Yeah, no, they are. I thought all year last year they were a class above everyone else.
My question is, who's going to be the challenger?
Oh, I think Sturt have recruited pretty well. So, and remembering also, Sturt and Glenelg played in the reserves grand final as well, and there were some good youth there, and also Sturt's 18s played in the grand final as well. So I think they've got a fair bit coming through. I think for mine, they're the other side still.
I couldn't agree with you more, mate. Absolutely. All right, mate, and we move on to soccer. Matches coming up. Obviously, we didn't get to play on the weekend because of stadium availability, which was a little bit frustrating, but that's okay. We'll move on from that. But matches coming up against Melbourne City on Thursday the 25th, and then Central Coast Mariners on the 3rd of February.
Yeah, a couple of big games coming up to hopefully a couple of good results and cement our spot in the top 6.
Huge. I totally agree with you there. And then some news that obviously is floating around. It's been floating around for quite some time, but the A-League troubles continue. Some scheduling, lack of growth. Expected that we're going to lose some jobs through the A-League, which is hard to believe considering the success that seems to be happening in soccer.
Yeah, let's also remember that we're such a huge country that your travel costs and all that are enormous. It's not like you get on the bus and drive to a game, etc. And a lot of national competitions do struggle overall in Australia. So, yeah.
It's going to be interesting to watch. We might just touch base on that one when it comes to the soccer with our soccer correspondent, Mary, over the next little bit and see if we can sort of get her to articulate it a little bit more. All right, mate, we're going to take a very, very quick break. When we come back, Mark Harrity in our Past Players, Past Legends segment.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break. Past players, past legends, past legends.
Today we're pleased, privileged to introduce South Australian left arm express fast bowler Mark Harrity. 84 first class games, 216 wickets. Magnificent at 254 runs too, Hags, with a top score of 19. We will get you batting at one stage. And unfortunately had a lot of injuries through his career. That'll play part of his story, but welcome aboard, Hags.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Mate, thanks for joining us. And we'd like to get a bit of background as to where you started your junior career here in South Australia.
So my story is an interesting one because I was very lucky to grow up in a street full of lots of kids. So we, in winter it was footy and out in the street, and in summer it was cricket in the street with tennis balls and stuff. And I, by chance, one day was playing in the street with up the driveway actually, and my brother and his good mate had just came home, and his mate was a opening bowler for Port Adelaide called Paul Ridgway, and at the time Phil de Freitas had come over and was playing for Port Adelaide at the same time. So they happened to be coming around our house. I don't know if it was for tea or something, but they saw me bowling up the driveway and commented, and they both sort of said you should come out to Port Adelaide and should be playing proper cricket. And that's sort of really where it led to. I went out to Port Adelaide. I knew Brad Young from high school. We went to high school together, so I knew Brad Young was out there, and sort of made it a bit easy to sort of reach out and go out there. So it sort of, it was I was a good batter with the tennis ball, put it that way.
Hags, David Curtin was playing with Port Adelaide at exactly at that same time, and he did say, playing with Daffy, that in the shower after the game he'd never felt so inadequate in his life. So yes, there as well with Daffy. Yep.
You mentioned obviously playing a bit of cricket in the street there, and it sounds like Phil de Freitas was instrumental in sort of leaning you a little bit towards cricket, because I believe footy was also on the radar.
Well, it was. I loved playing footy, and I played junior footy at Port Adelaide and at Port District. So it was my local club, and it was sort of. I guess I was lucky enough to get picked one year in the state 17s, and then by the time we got to the state, I got into the state 19s the following year. I rolled my ankle in the football season playing football, and it really ruined my carnival, to be honest. I sort of was on one leg and didn't have a great carnival, and I was a bit frustrated, which I don't know if that's what made me choose in the end or what. But I guess the other thing is I've got two older brothers, and they're both very good footballers, and so they didn't go as far as I thought they might with their football, and I just a choice to do something different too. Like, I loved cricket as much as I loved football, so just, I guess, a decision to do something different. I've no history really of cricket in my family, so yeah.
I think it's a fair point too, Hags, in terms of your brothers. I thought Brett should have definitely gone further in his footy than what he did. So yeah,
have to get it out of the way. Who do you support?
No, he's on the dark side. He's on the dark
He's
side.
on the dark side.
Definitely the dark side, yeah.
Yes, there was never any doubt that Hags was going to be a Port supporter.
I thought that might be the case, hence the reason why I asked.
Well, funny enough, I did grow up with a father who voted for Sturt, and most of my youngest memories are going Gunley Oval, and my oldest brother would put his duff coat on with Rick Davies on the back and sit down one end of the ground, and Brett and I would sit with Dad watching Sturt, and Peter Motley was my first real hero. Watching football, and I still walk past and see him today every now and then down Glenelg, and in awe of, he was probably as my first football hero, as he was my first probably cricket hero growing up, watching cricket.
Yeah, no, well, as we know, I've always used a line that he reminded me of Barry Robber, and you can't praise anyone more than that. And we'll never know how far he would have gone. He certainly would have been an all-time great.
I agree. Yeah. Totally agree.
Hags, and then so going on to make your Shield debut against WA at beautiful Adelaide Oval, and that go through that experience there, Hags.
Yeah, it was a strange debut. We'd won the toss, and I think we'd bowled, and I think the wicket had a little bit in it because there was a bit of rain around, and it had a bit in it, which I don't reckon it did for the next 10 years I played on it. But,
exactly.
To be honest, but I do remember my first over in Shield cricket very well, because it was to Jeff Marsh, who was the Aussie vice captain at the time, and I reckon he played and missed 5 or 6 balls, and it was probably one of the better overs I ever bowled in my life. And I think by the 3rd or 4th over I bowled, Mike Valletta, who was opening with, he nicked one to Brayshaw, and Bray let me down. He's dropped my first catch, and then from that moment, I sort of heard a very loud noise coming from the Bradman stand, and thought, what's happening? And it sounded like the world was ending, and it rained that hard that we were off the ground for the rest of the day. So I sort of, on day one, bowled 4 overs for maybe 4 runs and no wickets, and came out the next day, and it was a completely different day. I don't even think I got a wicket on my first innings on debut. If I remember rightly, it was a long day. They had a very good team, and it was a very long day.
Was Gilchrist in that side? Yeah,
Gilchrist and Moody, Langer, Martin, all those sort of guys. So it was a fair lineup.
It's pretty handy.
Valletta, Baker. They did. They batted deep too. They always had a fair bit of depth. And then your next game is actually, your first wicket was against Tasmania with your first wicket. Come on, see if you can remember who your first wicket was, Hags.
Yeah, I do, because I toured England with him, and with an Australia A team. We went to England as it was Sean Young, and China was his nickname, China Young, and it was caught by Paul Nobes in the gully.
Jeez, you were lucky. You went. So you might have been unlucky on the first one. You might have been a bit lucky on that one, mate.
Yeah, I reckon he cuddled it. I reckon it hit him in the chest that he cuddled it somehow. But yeah, no. So yes, I do remember that, and that was a bit of a relief because you got to after the first game, I started to worry a little bit.
And then sort of you gone and you ended up being selected in the Australian Cricket Academy that season, and obviously go through that experience, Hags.
How did that come about?
Yeah, so I think I ended up doing 2 seasons in the Cricket Academy, which I was lucky because I know Glenn McGrath did a couple of seasons and Matthew Nicholson did a couple of seasons, I believe, but not too many people got the chance to, but I was lucky because originally if I remember rightly, I was going to be part-time, and then someone pulled out and I was lucky enough to get in. And look, that was a fair lineup. I mean, we had, obviously, Rod Marsh being your coach was probably the first sort of surreal thing for me, growing up and watching watching him on TV and stuff, and then to realise he's now your coach. And then in the team we had Shane Lee and Ryan Campbell and Dan Marsh, the son of Rod, and then the late Andrew Simons, Nicholson. Yeah, it was quite a good team, and Robbie Baker. So there's some really good cricketers around at the time. Ian Harvey. To name a few. So
and a bit of fun. Bit of fun down the pub down at. Were they down at the pub the Bright down at Port Adelaide?
Yeah, no, they had moved by then. By the time I started, we were at Del Monte.
Right.
At Henley there. So that never thought at the time I would be living not too far away from there. But Del Monte is where we stayed, and I've got to be honest with you, Rod sort of told me if what I'd get paid to actually not live there, and I thought, well, I've got my own house here, and I'm in Adelaide, and I choose to take the money and live at home. So, I mean, I spent a lot of time there, and you train with them every day, and you have the occasional sleepover, but it was easier for me at the time. I had a partner and I had a house here in Adelaide, so it was a bit hard to say I'm going to go live in a 2-bedroom room with a guy when I could be living at home. So, it was still an amazing experience. And then the following year, then I was full time, and that academy team had some amazing players, and that was Brett Lee and Jason Gillespie and Mike Hussey. There was some big names that went through the following season.
And then you did a tour too, didn't you? When did that come in, the tour to England? Then was that? Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I remember the tour was after it was the summer of '95. The winter of '95, because we just lost the Shield final to Queensland.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that game, Hags. That's still the black mark in South Australian cricket history.
Yeah, I know. They beat us in 2 days when we played in the minor round in Queensland, and we beat them in 2 days in Adelaide. So you always knew whoever hosted it was probably going to be the favourite, unfortunately. But that trip, Stewie Law was the captain of Queensland at the time, and Stewie Law ended up being the captain of the Australia A team, which was fun when you've just lost the Shield. And of course they also had Matty Hayden and Michael Kasparov from Queensland, so those guys didn't mind on the tour bus playing video of the Shield final wherever we went. So we had to sit there and lick our wounds watching that. But that was another great experience. Very lucky again to have played in a team that had so many very, very successful cricketers. So obviously Ponting, Langer, Gilchrist, Hayden, Elliott, Law, obviously I said, Peter McIntyre, Kasparov, Angel. Yeah,
it's the majority played Test cricket, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's to be honest, only myself and Shane George didn't end up playing Test cricket in that. Shane George replaced Brendan Julian injured before the trip.
Yep.
And Potting actually mentions it in his book. He sort of in his biography mentioned that we were probably a bit unlucky, but the two that didn't play, but they had a very, very successful team, and it was very evident when we were there. You know, like the success they were having and what was happening. You knew something big was coming, and of course, the next decade of Australian cricket was dominated.
Mate, you mentioned obviously there that taking on the academy as a full-time type role. Just go through some of the experiences of some of the players and some of their preparation, but also going from, I suppose, part-time to being full-time as part of that academy. Drastic changes had to be made as well?
Yeah, that's probably the first thing you notice, because when I first played for South Australia, you know, the training was mainly, you know, after guys had jobs. I didn't know. I'd only just got out of high school, but you know, I remember I think Tim Nielsen cut lawns for a living, and other guys worked at banks or stuff like that. But so training was 5:30 at night. So you trained a couple of nights, 2 or 3 nights a week back in the day in first class cricket. But as for the academy, that was basically what a first class cricketer does now. You train every day, and you've got commitments every day. So we got a taste of that at a very young age, and it was sort of I guess that's the first thing you wake up to, is that, you know, there's running, and well, it's funny now because I'm a coach of an academy myself, the Darren Lehman Cricket Academy, and I set the program for that, and it's very similar. You know, you've got your couple of weight sessions a week, your running session, obviously your main skill session, your main competition net session, and all those sort of things. So I guess that was a bit of a culture shock, but at the same time, at that age, I just loved it so much. You couldn't get the ball out of my hand, so I'd never complain about bowling. And I think the other thing that probably helped me choose cricket in the end was I love the heat. You know, even days like this, if you told me I could have a cold day or a 40 degrees day, I'd take this any day to bowl in, because I just felt it was so much easier to bowl when it was warm than when it was cold. So it probably helped me choose cricket over football.
Yeah. Now, one thing, it's not unfair to say that Hags is not Don Bradman with the bat. There was a game against Tasmania, and we only needed a few runs for first innings points, and Hags has gone for a leg glance to get the winning run on the first innings.
Yes.
The ball went straight off the back of his bat to where the keeper would have been in Mark Atkinson if he'd stayed there. He'd obviously started to go down the leg side for Hags leg glancing. And, so beautifully placed Hags off the back of the bat to get first innings points that day.
Yeah, very hard to repeat that shot.
Very hard to coach it.
You've got a very good memory too. Yes, I think the only thing Sir Donald Bradman and I shared was a locker. I actually was lucky enough to sit on his locker back in the original change rooms. The names were on the lockers. And I don't know how it happened, but I ended up sitting on his locker, and I thought, well, there you go. You could have, South Australia's best ever, Australia's best ever cricketer, and probably South Australia or Australia's worst ever batsman in the same locker.
Oh, you certainly wear that one, Hags. You can, that. So in terms of injuries throughout your career, Hags, go through some of those and just the acute frustration, because there are a couple of times where it looked like Australian selection may be a possibility, and then injuries intervened. Yeah,
look, it's I guess the strange thing for me was that I'd done ankles and stuff with football and that, but I'd never had anything really serious, and I hadn't broken bones and all those sort of things. And then playing cricket, I had a bit of a slingy action that when I got tired, my counter rotation got worse, and I'd fall away and really try to shoulder the ball down. That's where my pace came from. And unfortunately, probably not knowing what we know now, like I wish I could go back in time, and I would have loved to coach myself knowing what I know now.
Yeah.
And that's hence why I'm still involved in cricket, because I get the opportunity to do this with the young lads and try to help them. But for me, there was debate over what to do with my action, and they didn't want to change it because it was successful, but unfortunately, I was playing in an Australia 11 game against the West Indies, in which Peter Taylor was the head selector back then, and he actually said before the game, spoke to us and said, look, Craig McDermott's broken down in the Windies, and we're looking to pick someone out of this game that might replace him. And you obviously be opening bowling with Brendan Julian, you're a realistic chance. And of course, I bowled out a couple of overs at the end of the day. We got bowled out, and we had a few overs before stumps. And I remember walking off the ground, and it's the first time ever my back didn't seem right. I couldn't bend over, and I didn't know what had happened. And I got taken to get X-rays, and they said, "Oh, look, you've got stress fractures, and basically season's over." And I think at that time I was leading the wicket taking in a field comp. So
that was your best year, Hags. I reckon at that stage too. Yeah,
it was, and it was disappointing because I was up and about, ready to go, and then of course Brendan Julian went on and ended up replacing him, and I ended up going home, and there was a lot of debate over and arguments over whether it should be season ending or can they monitor it, because South Australia at this time were a chance to finally win a Shield. We were during a successful period, and we were top of the ladder. And so I actually flew home from an Australia A game with stress fractures and tried to play a Shield game about 4 days later.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
So I did, but yeah, at the time to say I was a bit of a pincushion was an understatement, and I never blame anyone because I wanted to play and I chose that. I was probably a bit young and immature to make those decisions for myself, but I chose to try to play through this, through the stresses, and it didn't really work, and it felt like a nightmare. 2 years of just pain until eventually Dennis Lilly came along and changed my action, and they decided to see if they could. Which basically turned me from almost side on, and I lost my sling a little bit, and it was sort of weird. I got sort of in between again, and although I had good games and did all right and lasted another 8 years or 7 years, whatever it was, I probably was never as quick. I wasn't that sort of 150 bowler that I was, but yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. I sometimes think I bowled better because I controlled it more. But I wasn't as, I was probably 10 k's slower. So, it was an interesting sort of thing at the time. But, so there's the stresses, obviously, that I try to play through. And other than that, to be honest, it was mainly the backs. And I've had, like anyone, a couple of knee scrapes and elbows and things here and there. But that's part and parcel of it, and never stopped me playing. I mean, I remember breaking my finger on my bowling hand, and I still played a Shield game with it and taped up, and you just do these things. But the back's the hard one, because no matter how tough you think you are and you can grit your teeth and get through it, it's nothing worse. It's not enjoyable, back pain. So as I said, it's something I love to do, and still do now. A lot of private coaching where I'm very technical about bowling, and I've spent a lot of time with a lot of bowlers, and including Spencer recently.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. I was thinking of Spencer as you were saying, and I was going to say, well, what of the experiences you went through, and how much influence? And I will say personally, I think you've had the most influence on Spencer Johnson, and that with remodelling his action. How much of what you've been through became involved in that side of it, Hags?
Yeah, I mean, it had, but with him a little bit different, because he's not complained of back pain or had any back pain. But I've always, this is pretty much my 10th year being involved with Spencer, and my 8th year being his head coach at West Torrens, and I've been following him, through that time, and I've always been concerned about how quickly he runs off the wicket.
Yes.
And he's got the traditional, well, he did have, shall I say, the traditional load up of a front arm that a lot of the Poms have, and it pulls you off the wicket, pulls you down and pulls you away. And I started looking into some footage of Mitchell Stark bowling and the way he loads up, and I just knew there. I've been trying to get Spencer get my hands on him because I don't get to see him a lot. Sometimes, when he's with the Redbacks, but I've been trying to convince him, mate, you need to change his front arm. And I'd been saying it for a few seasons. And 1 year 2 years ago, it was now, or a year and a half ago now, he finally went, all right, let's do it. And we did it. And I can't get over how quick he changed it and fixed it and how much success he's had really quickly. There's no doubt that natural raw talent was there. I think, if anything, I've just helped him with direction and pace. Because the funny thing about cricket is if you get your action right and get behind the ball properly, you get shape, you bowl good areas, you bowl better pace, and you're less likely to break down. So it can be one or the other, and I think that's pretty much what sums up a lot of people's careers, really.
I do remember, though, with Spencer, I remember you showing me some photos in that, Hags, and it was quite a significant change that you did manage to. And he's certainly he looks more comfortable and probably more balanced than what he did.
He does, doesn't he? Like, he is a very strong fella, and although he had some injuries at different times, one thing that may have helped him is he did take his cricket seriously and get himself fit, nice and strong and fit, and when he had time off with injuries. So, he's a strong lad. I mean, you look at him and he could be playing AFL football. He's and he's an athlete in the field. He's got everything going for him. I mean, it's really exciting to know that he's ready to go when Mitchell Stark's ready to retire. That's the exciting bit at the moment because he missed some years of cricket. I feel like he could still play for quite a while.
I certainly hope so, and I just want him playing some first class cricket for South Australia. We haven't seen him this year again because he did the hammy, and then he's just come back now, and effectively just coming back for Brisbane now. And the potential he showed last year and bowling on when Karen Rolton was just ridiculously flat was sort of watching you were going, wow, this kid's not a kid, but he seems a kid because he hasn't played. So he's hardly played. You're going, wow, this kid's got it. Yeah.
Well, that's what I feel like. I hope they haven't missed the boat there with Spencer, South Australian cricket, because I feel like if he'd played a full season, him and Drew, Drew was our lead run scorer and he didn't get in the team till round 5. And Spencer didn't until after Christmas either. And when you look at it, in the season they both had, if they played a full season, I got no doubt we would have dominated. And that was probably a little bit of my frustrations I had with the Sacre at the time, that there was 2 guys on your doorstep that were 10-year-olds at West Torrens that you're recruiting all these people from interstate, and 2 of your best, I reckon, are here. But unfortunately, they're not seeing Spencer this year, and unfortunately, Drew's not in the team anymore. He's out of form a little bit at the moment, but in saying that, he's their leading run scorer in one-day cricket, doing it really well in one-day cricket this year for the Redbacks. So hopefully he'll find some form again. But
I'm just buggered what happened to Drewy, why the grip sort of seemed to change and that. I don't know who got in his head, and I certainly know it wasn't you. I'd love to know there. And acute frustration because he was hitting the ball so straight last year, and you thought, wow, we finally got a number 3. We finally got a number 4. We can finally build this on a South Australian, hopefully a run of success. And I think he got dropped too quickly this year, but he's hitting around his front pad. I just buggered why that grip change came in, Hags, and and
I don't know, and unlike Spencer, I'll never take any credit for his batting. But I can see that, obviously, and I noticed it, and it's a tough one for me to question. I've got the uttermost confidence in questioning anything to do with bowling, and I speak with Ryan Harris and Butters, and in the past, anyone that's been up there, and we change notes and exchange notes, but from a batting point of view, I'll never question what they're doing. I mean, who knows? I wouldn't say that they're telling him to play across the line to so early. He seemed to have more patience last year, and I don't know if he's putting pressure on himself to score quicker, which he doesn't need to do. He doesn't need to do. They need someone who can. I mean, games aren't going 4 days. They need someone who's got some patience and who can stay in there, because if he does that, then by the time Manenti and Lehman come in, it's good night to oppositions, and that's what was happening last year.
Yeah, and it was funny out of that. Pete, I ran into Hags at a it's a one-day game down at West Torrens on a Sunday. Yep. And I said, because Drew was batting, and I said to Hags, what the hell's happened with his grip? And Hags has just smiled and laughed at me. He's gone, Rick Darling's virtually, it's just thing. Over there. Now, Rick I hadn't seen Rick at that stage, and he was sitting there and he said, he's virtually said word for word what you've just said, Malcolm. Yep. So I said, well, at least that means, therefore, my observations aren't too bad. So, yeah, along that.
Yeah. So I'm not sure with that one, but hopefully something gets sorted out. Unfortunately, though, I noticed he just yesterday he got a first ball to chop one on. First ball of the second living game he's playing in. So unfortunately, but yeah, look, I know he's still got another year, and I've got no doubt he'll be back. And as I said, if you get him and McSweeney and Hunt and all that back in form. It's a fair lineup because the bowling's not an issue. They'll bowl teams out now.
Yeah.
Well, mate, we have to ask about the workload of, obviously, cricket at the moment. It just seems like everybody's playing every 5 minutes. Is that a positive or a negative, but probably more along the lines of Spencer Johnson in him making those adjustments because he did have additional games to be playing in or additional opportunities?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, my biggest criticism is the scheduling. I don't mind how much cricket they play at times, but I don't know how they'll ever fix it. But I don't like how someone within the Test team who's never opened becomes an opener because all the candidates to be the opener for Australia are all playing Big Bash cricket.
Yeah, the schedule. Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
That seems ridiculous to me, but good luck telling the Big Bash to move over Christmas, and good luck telling Melbourne you can't have the Boxing Day test. So I don't know how they're ever going to fix that one, but I just don't like that. And another great example is, and I'll throw this one out there, Spencer's now spent the last 10 or more months playing a game where you bowl maximum of 4 overs.
Yeah. And
he got picked for Australia, and unfortunately he did his hamstring in his debut in the one-day game for Australia and bowled 8 overs. So he once bowled 8 overs, didn't get through it. Now, what happens now, I know this weekend he comes back and Glenelg West Torrens play each other at Adelaide Oval on Sunday night in the grand final, and there's talk that everyone will play. So they're going to have, I think there's going to be over 12 first-class cricketers in the game, which is sensational. But then what do they do? Because how's Spencer going to be ready to play Shield cricket?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how's he going to bowl 20 overs in a day when he's not bowled more than 4 in a day? And I mean, look, off the field, he'll have to start maybe working on his workloads, but he's also probably getting ready for an IPL as well.
Yeah.
In April. And that's where the structure's all over the place. It just doesn't seem right, does it?
No.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe.
We thank Mark Harrity there for his time. We will split the interview up into 2 because that was quite a long interview. And obviously, for me, bowling on the road, playing a bit of road cricket, a couple of players just happened to notice him going, hey, come and have a bit of a game here at a local cricket club. And
Phil de Freitas, the ex-England opening bowler, batsman. Good test match here at one stage, Daffy. Hags there deciding with cricket or footy and ending up with cricket. He's a guy who wears his heart on the sleeve. He's a very much proud South Australian cricket man, and someone I've got a lot of time for. Loves cricket, loves talking cricket. So obviously I'll probably tick a base there with him.
Absolutely. And obviously the last part of our segment, like we do with all of our guests, is we talk about obviously their top couple of players they played with and played against, and he named some South Australian royalty and some Australian royalty. So can't get any better than that, and obviously still involved with cricket as he mentioned there. And
coach of West Torrens.
Absolutely, and like you said, loves his cricket. So all right, mate, let's get into happy days.
Happy days.
All right, kicking us off on happy days today, a bit of a gun player which we've talked about previously, but I'm sure he's going to be talked about a lot more during this season, and that's Connor Rozee. Happy birthday this week to Connor Rozee. Pick number 5 in the 2018 draft.
Yeah, he's a gun. He's a gun. We just got to wait and see now. Captaincy, I think he'll be fine with that. Jump aboard, follow me on the bus. I think he's pretty mature. He showed that for North Adelaide in 18 as a Nord man. We certainly noticed how important he was there back then.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, Port Adelaide Premiership player and North Adelaide Football Club coach Josh Carr gave Rozee his senior debut in the SANFL in 2018. And as you mentioned, pretty successful and impressive campaign for the Roosters. Like you said, we just couldn't keep our eyes off of him going, somebody do something, but he was just so good. And like you said, now taking on the Port Adelaide captaincy, and I think he'll take to it like a duck to water. So happy birthday this week to Connor Rozee. All right, mate, we move on. Cricket this week, 1980, the West Indies beat England 2-0 to win the first World Series Cup. I think 1980, it might have been the World Series Cup.
World Series Cup, yeah. Google that myself. Look, West Indies back then, as we know, they were the powerhouse back then.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we just hope, we all want West Indies cricket to come back and be competitive.
Absolutely. And we'll stick with cricket in 1990, obviously with the test being played here in Adelaide. Wasim Akram scores test century 123, obviously at the famous Adelaide Oval.
No, he batted beautifully that game. He smashed him, worked it. Class. Great cricketer.
Absolutely.
One of the all-time great left-arm swing bowlers, but, geez, he could bat as well.
Totally agree. All right, tennis, 1983. Tennis great Bjorn Borg announces his retirement at 26. 5 Wimbledons, 6 French Opens. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see the best of him here in Australia.
Yeah, he went all right, though, didn't he?
Didn't go too bad.
No, it's disappointing that he retired at 26, but, again, I think he, too, there weren't any enemies with Bjorn, too. I think none of us disliked.
No, well, his enemy was himself as a young fella, but as a senior, obviously, you don't get the nickname the Iceman for no reason, and making the decision to retire a little bit earlier there, and obviously a little bit was touched upon during the McEnroe documentary.
Yeah.
Unusual to see a player, obviously, in the peak of his career, obviously retire, but he had his reasons and totally respect him for that. All right, 2017, Formula One. The Formula One group removes Bernie Ecclestone as CEO, making the Liberty Media consortium, I suppose, makes the offer of taking over of $8 billion of that organisation, obviously making some big changes. And I don't know, Formula One for me, it's still going through that evolution of, it seems popular one year and then not so popular next, and it just seems to be going through that ever-changing evolution.
Yeah, I don't think it's won us over. It had it, back in the golden era. Yeah. Look, I'm not a huge petrol head, but I'll certainly follow it. And it's an
interesting one anyway.
Yeah.
So, all right. And to finish us off on happy days, mate, in basketball, Kobe Bryant scores 81 points
ridiculous.
in 122 to 104 victory over the Lakers. That's crazy when you think about it, that he scores 81 points, and it's the second highest game total score in NBA history behind Wilt Chamberlain.
I'm buggered on both of them. I can't. It blows me away how someone can get 100 points. Like, what do you do? Did everyone the opposition walk off the court?
It's like the Harlem Globetrotters, isn't it?
Yeah, and 81 points. Yeah, that does blow my mind. Well and truly,
considering the score was 122 to 104.
It wasn't like it was a 70-point win. Yeah.
I suppose in cricketing parlance, it's like the T20 where somebody is just going absolutely berserk and scoring 200 runs like Glenn Maxwell did in that unbelievable innings.
Josh Brown last night.
Absolutely. All right, mate, let's get into the extra time big finish.
Extra time, big finish.
All right, we'll be scooting through them pretty quickly today. The basketball, the 36ers, what have they done? Maybe we got to take a little bit of credit for this. No, I don't think so. They've won their last 2 games with some pretty massive wins along the way.
Yeah, too little, too late though. In reality, it's been a frustrating year. You always wonder what was going on, and as you've said, too little, too late.
Yeah, I was going to say they're obviously trying to pump it up a little bit, saying that they are a chance to make the finals. I know there's 5 or 6 games to go, but I think it is a little bit too late, unfortunately. All right, we'll stay with basketball. The WNBL 8th place Lightning upset Townsville in a 90-75 victory.
Yeah,
well done.
Yeah, good win. Definitely a Simon Goodwin. So at least that keeps them alive a little bit as well. So hopefully kick on a bit from there, the Lightning.
Absolutely. And we haven't covered too much of the Lightning this year because we've just been so bogged down with all the cricket and tennis and every other sport at the moment that is keeping us occupied. All right. The AFLW, Adelaide will be hoping that 2024 they can develop the next generation of midfielders.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised. I still think they're a key forward short. I'm not convinced Caitlin Gould up forward and that. I thought they might have gone a little bit different way in their recruiting. But, obviously reasonably happy. And, look, they're a goal away from playing in the grand final, so they're still around the mark again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Port, that's just going to be a slow build a bit.
Absolutely. Obviously, decision-making when they get the ball in their hands, I think they were the poorest in 2024 when it came to that. 2023. So the big challenge, obviously, for 2024 is ball in hand, better decision-making.
They had Piper Window, who will be a very, very, very good AFLW player.
There you go. You've heard it first, ladies and gentlemen. Do we believe that Brisbane is still going to be the team to beat?
I think they're certainly well and truly going to be around the mark again.
They're probably missing a key forward as well.
North Melbourne as well.
Yep.
It's again, though, I personally think that the season should be starting about now like it was. I think they gave up the golden goose.
Yep.
And because the AFL Grand Final finished, that should be the last game.
Yep.
Bang. Yeah, maybe you could go like the SANFL where we used to be the week later, so the focus got on the SANFL. Yeah, that's still fine. But to have another competition keep going, you don't finish the main movie and put the entree on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fair cool. All right, mate, and to finish this off today, we're going to hold off on the good, the bad, the ugly this week, so we're just going to finish off on this one here. Should the Adelaide test be day-night, day, or a mixture of both from year to year?
It's interesting, though. I will say I think the older people in general prefer the day test. Probably the younger crowd are more the day-night.
Yep. Now,
I can see you can't say it affected the crowds this year to play Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and getting 68,000 on a idiotic time schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the rant. Insanity to start it on the Wednesday. Was incredible. So, I can see both factors there.
I'm a bit of a mix of...
Yeah.
Mix it up a little bit. Obviously, depending on who you're playing, where you want to be... and again, like most associations like the AFL and everything, they know their age demographic. They know what they're trying to achieve and who they're catering towards. Whoever they're playing, I think, it's a bit of a like pitches.
Yeah, and it's a lottery, though, with the weather. There was one day night test match where we were mucking around, yelling out, run out, we want to have rounds of soup. Don't worry about rounds of beers. You wanted soup because it was that bloody cold. So,
and it looks
where
like
this one, it would have been perfect for day night as it turned out, the weather-wise. So, yeah.
And it looks like with the scheduling that's going to go on next year that most of the tests are going to be played actually before Christmas. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch. And I'm sure Peter Malanauskas is going to be pushing the Adelaide Oval boat pretty hard.
Yeah, and look, I think Peter there was
justified.
Justified in terms of what it was. He was only saying what we were all thinking.
Absolutely. And good to have somebody in charge that's...
And not afraid to push the envelope.
Absolutely.
Full in coordinates with Mally in that regard.
Absolutely. All right, mate, we're going to leave it there. We will split Mark Harrity's interview up into two because that was quite a long interview. And as per usual, mate, we promise to do better next week, and we thank our guests once again. And
appreciate Hag's time.
Absolutely. And I thank you once again, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at SportsCast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.